Welcome to the Women in Industry podcast. My name is Kirsty Davies-Chinnock, and today I'm joined by Amy Bird. Amy is the CEO of Countrywide Metals, a director of Connolly Metals, and a founder of a new business, Women in Scrap. Hello, Amy. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I first met you last year, didn't I? You came to my conference with some of your colleagues, Stephanie and Summer. And what struck me as we sort of got to know each other a bit is how hard you're really working to change the narrative out there, particularly for women in scrap and metal recycling. What made you decide to really sort of focus on this now?
So I've done this job all my life, pretty much. So born into the scrap trade. Dad started his business in 77, which was the year I was born. So, I've grown up. I can remember Mum trying to keep me quiet and giving me pennies to count in the back office of the scrapyard, So from that point where very much the women were bookkeepers, literally, if you raise your head above a bookkeeper to say anything else, then you were shot down in flames. So going from that and then sort of coming up through the ranks and being accused of being the cocky teenager, because if I was watching someone in the yard not doing an awful lot, I couldn't help myself but go out and go, well, come on, what are you doing, kind of thing. And really being shot down, even by Dad, really. You can't do things like that. You're a girl. You can't go out in the yard like that. So all the way through, and then realising that what people were doing is they were bringing young girls, women in, and not giving them any skills, sinking a young woman into a room of 500 men at a conference, and she was literally ignored. Didn't know what to say, stuck on her own in a corner, and the only people really talking, and I'll say me actually, I won't say them to me, is someone who was going to chat me up. I mean, that's the way it was at 18. And it's got better, so much better. But there's still these people struggling to find their voice. So that's really, I'm quite passionate about that, as you know. And it's time to start making a difference with that.
I think things have changed a lot over the last sort of 35 years I've been doing this in the metal sector as a whole. But the sort of metal recycling scrap sector has always been slightly to the side of the metals industry. And certainly going back to when I was a child in the 70s, I'm a little bit older than you, but when I was a child in the 70s, not just being blunt, there was a boy at my school whose surname was synonymous with the Birmingham Scrap Company, and the other parents were like, "Oh, you don't play with him." There was a lot of sort of like discrimination against him and his family. Did you see that as well?
Oh, 1,000,000%. So I'm out of the East End in London originally, and Dad did okay. So when I was about 11, we were living in Kent, and Dad decided he was going to send me to quite a posh school because he could kind of see what was going on in scrap. And, when you wanted to get financing or talk to the banks and that kind, you weren't being taken seriously. Or Dad certainly felt that way. And he thought that if he could get me a really top education and get me mixing with different people that were bankers and lawyers and all of this, it would really, really help. What actually happened was I was treated differently, 100%. My voice didn't work. And I look back very fondly now. My dad would rock up at this big posh school in a gold Rolls Royce, full on Del Boy, and all the yummy mummies would run after him. But there was a stigma. You're a scrap dealer's daughter, shouldn't really be here. I'd go to these friends' houses, posh dinners. I didn't know what to do, genuinely did not know what to do. And he was right. It's made a difference. It's helped me 100% because it gave me this, I'm as good as anyone else. I'm absolutely as good as anyone else in this place. And then I could talk to other people. But I really did. For the first few years, I was very much the scrap dealer's daughter. And I wasn't invited to the parties and I wasn't included. And I certainly, even by the teachers, I wasn't applauded for what I could do. And I think that's the problem. I think when the teachers are doing it as well, because actually didn't really understand people like me from my background, who really were no different, but they didn't know what to do with me. So I think that stigma it's got better again. I mean, a lot of the scrap dealers' daughters, sons, whatever, are all in very, very good schools, getting great educations, and are really flying the flag. But when I was 11, being put into that environment, it was terrifying.
It's difficult to understand if you've not been in that environment, just
Yeah.
how sort of damaging that can be to a young child. Um, but it's as painful as it would have been, not discounting that at all. It's given you that core of strength, and you've had a mixture of highs and lows in your career. Has that sort of strength helped you cope with the lows? And what have you how's Amy got through those? Which is the quintessential Amy bit that has helped you cope when things have gone wrong?
Yeah, so I think you have to have this resilience, Kirsty. You develop tools. So the problem with it, as I see, is first of all, it can breed this bit of imposter syndrome. So for a long time, there was this kind of fake it till you make it. And you have to put your big girl pants on and try and block out what was going on around you and have tunnel vision to move forward. But to do that, you've got to have a confidence. You've got to have, and my family gave me that, to be fair, they did. And you've got to have the confidence to move forward. However, when you experience that at a young age, I can honestly say it's taken me to my mid-40s to go, you're not an imposter. You absolutely deserve this seat at the table. You know your stuff. You've put your time in. You're good at what you do. You're not an imposter anymore. But that's taken 30 years to get to that point. That shouldn't be happening at all. Do you know what I mean? That's just absolutely ridiculous. And in that time, everybody who come across me wouldn't have believed that I was feeling like that on the inside. I was confident, bordering cocky. I had this persona. And so they wouldn't have dreamed, actually, maybe Amy needs a bit of a well done. Maybe Amy needs a little bit of an arm around her shoulders. And what that led to, when you mentioned low point, I had a low point where someone did come along into a brilliant business I had, and they started telling me I was good at something. They started saying, wow, you're amazing. I think you're superwoman. How are you managing all of this? And I can honestly say, as embarrassed as I am about this, I sucked it up. Every single bit of it. I took it. I took them at their word. I was like, finally, somebody gets me. Somebody who is far more intelligent than me. Somebody who knows more than me. They get me. And they took me hook, line, and sinker. But that came from all the way back at 11, having to pretend I was someone else to get me through it. Now, how do I get through it? What makes me Amy is I make sure I know my stuff and I'm not afraid to disagree with somebody. That's really how I managed to get through this business to the point I am now. And hopefully people will get there sooner if I can give them a bit of help with that.
I think that's really interesting, particularly when you sort of say it's almost like you're dragging the baggage behind you until you cut it loose. And,
Yeah.
it's not till we get older and we go, well, hang on a minute, I actually am damn good at this. But it's that putting on the mask. I used to say that years ago, oh, I've got to go and be Kirsty now. And it was almost like I'd put Kirsty on. And I am naturally loud, confident, the show off. So I'd always sort of say, oh, I don't have imposter syndrome, which was a complete lie, because of course I did in some areas. And I think when there are areas where we doubt ourselves or have been taught to doubt ourselves, and someone comes along and tells us we're amazing, we all want to be good at something and we all want people to think we're good at something. And it's so easy to sort of almost just fly into the spider's web, sort of do it yourself, and then you can't get out. And it's like being, a fish in the sea and then being reeled in. And I think it's, if we can teach the next generation or that they can be true to themselves and confident to themselves, they're going to be less likely to be taken in by those types of people, I think.
Well, and I think we've got this problem with the Instagram thing. You know, there is so much, I've seen so many things where somebody's presenting an image of something and then you see a behind the scenes shot and it's nothing like what's actually going on. But the whole world is buying in to the fakedom of that front shot. So let's get some realism back into it, you know. And another thing on it is that I missed out on so much stuff because unless I already could be good at something, I wouldn't even try it. You know, school ski trip. People like me don't go skiing. I'm not even going to try and do that. So again, for years and years and years, if I wasn't already semi-good at something, I'd say no. Whereas now I'll go, wow, that looks amazing. Can you show me how you do that? Or can I have a go at that? Fear of failure has gone. You know, I've learned that through various different things. It's okay to fail. You don't have to be the best. And, you know, we've spoken about this before. I think it's really important that we teach our children, next generation, if you do not know how to do it, please have a go and ask me and get some advice. Don't just write it off completely because it could be your thing. You just might need a little bit of help with it, you know?
And practice makes perfect, or practice makes better. I don't like the perfect thing. Once you get to perfect, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Whether that's something to do with the arts, whether it's in your career, whether it's a physical skill, whether it's a language, you're not going to, I'm not going to open Duolingo and learn to speak French in 3.7 seconds.
No.
It's going to take years to do it. But I can do that if I put the practice in. And I think this instant gratification that has become more and more to the fore as technology is advanced, and as society has changed, means that, as you say, there's that, oh, if I can't do it straight away, I'm not going to have a go. But there's so much fun in learning new things.
Oh, yeah.
And the fun is mastering each skill, particularly if it takes a bit longer. And you get to the end, it's like, oh, yeah, I can do that now. It's interesting you say about the fake it till you make it as well. And one of the other things that was sort of really common when I joined in sort of the 80s and 90s was, for a woman in the metal sector, you sort of had to work, twice as hard and as men to sort of get half the results. And we used to sort of be quite proud of that. It was sort of, whereas I look back now and I go, I don't think that's something we should be proud of. And I certainly don't think it's something we should be teaching the next generation. And you're a family business, aren't you, as well? So what are you sort of teaching the next generation? How are you getting them to believe in themselves?
So I was I'd say for 10 years when the children were young. So my husband and I have got 5 children between us. My niece lives with me as well. Manic household. And we started a business from scratch. And I had the family business down south. So badge of honour at the school gates was me running around in my workwear, my dirty boots, doing everything. And patting myself on the back for it a little bit because I was running up and down the motorway. I was running the children. I was cooking all the meals. I'm from such a traditional family. My husband once said to my mum something like, "Oh, Pat, I had to cook my own dinner on Wednesday night." And my mum turned around and went, "Oh, Amy, what are you playing at?" So I'm from such a traditional backstory that I didn't have any other way. I didn't know there was another way that men can cook dinner. They can do that. That once your children get to 14, they also could maybe make you something to eat when you get home from work. So what I've done with my lot is still a traditional family. We still do, Sunday lunches around the table. And I love that. Love it, love it. But I have had to let them in on what I do and explain to them what my day is like sometimes. And I've had to carve some time out that is non-negotiable, that is mine. That's going to the gym or walking the dog. That's mine. The rest of the time you've got me. And then for them coming into business, same thing. Look after your mind. When your mind is spiraling, or you just find yourself down, or you feel overwhelmed, get it out. Talk to me, get it on a piece of paper, do whatever you got to do, go for a run, but it has to come first. You can't put yourself last, because I did it for so long that I hit complete and utter burnout, not just kind of, oh, I need a couple of days off, complete and utter. I don't know if you've heard that book about the woman who went to bed for the year. That's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to get into bed and I didn't want to get up again. And I couldn't. In my head, I felt like everything would break down without me just carrying on battering myself. So with my family, I'm encouraging them, work hard, follow your passion, find something you love enough that you're not dragging yourself up every day and going, oh, I got to go to work. You know, you've got to love what you do. Otherwise it becomes very difficult, doesn't it? So I'm hoping they're going to learn from it. Interestingly, my girls, having watched me, are kick-ass. Like, they know what they want. They are pursuing their dreams in the field they want to be in. And the boys are working hard within our family business, but you really can see a difference in the gender. You know, the boys equally working hard, as I say, but neither of the girls have come into the business. Now, that's one of two things. They've either gone, I'm not working as hard as mum, that's absolutely ridiculous. Or they've gone, actually, my passion is science, in the case of one, and the other one is an estate agent. That's her passion. And I want them to follow it. So it is interesting how it pans out.
It is interesting, isn't it? I mean, my son never really had a passion for the business. He worked for me for about 18 months, which was more of he got stuck in Australia over COVID. And then he got back and he was like, I need a job. And I was like, well, you can work for me. But I think we both knew it wasn't going to be forever. And he works for Aston Villa Football Club now, which is like his dream job. So, and he was good at what he did, but it wasn't for him. And I would have hated for him to feel he had to stay rather than go and do something he really wants to do. Because you, as you rightfully say, you've got to wake up in the morning and want to go to work, even on a really bad day. It might be a certain situation or challenge or problem that you've got to deal with, that's sort of like, you know, that big black cloud. But once you've dealt with it, everything else is fine. It's when the whole career or job is that big black cloud, isn't it? And you don't want anyone to get into that situation. So you also travel a lot for work. Your business takes you around the world. What countries do you most love to visit and do business in?
You know, the culture around what we do is incredible. So we do a lot of work with India, China, been over to Brazil. Brazil, what a place. I mean, just incredible. You know, the women's figures, for starters, as they're walking up and down the beach, they own that. They look amazing, and they don't care, you know, and that is just so amazing to see. So aside from work, that's pretty incredible. And Dubai, I've watched Dubai come up and up. I mean, we were in, not Dubai, where was I? I was in Abu Dhabi recently. And with work, ended up with some colleagues that we do a little bit of business with, but I don't know them massively well, on Jeep safaris, all screaming our heads off, you know, and to be able to do that. And again, I go back to being a woman in a Jeep with three scrap men equally screaming as much as me, if not more so, as we go down these dunes. What a thing, you know, and that all comes from being in the scrap world. And that, you know, people don't see that. You go to someone from school and go, oh, have you thought about working in a scrapyard? Don't be ridiculous. I'm not going to go and do that every day. Oh, well, this year, I mean, I've been to, where have I been so far? We've done Spain.
You were in India in January because you stood me up.
Yeah. Yes, I did. India. On the way back from India, Dubai, we're going to Israel and Vegas in a couple of weeks. We've got Copenhagen. So the opportunities to do that and meeting this network. And that's another thing. You see, I've got a lovely network now that has become something I've learned to trust. Now, back in the day, well, don't tell him what you're up to. Don't let them know who you're dealing with. Don't talk to this one. They're only after one thing. And now I've got my tribe, and having my tribe, we're in the same job, there's friendly competition, and sometimes not so friendly. But at the end of the day, ultimately, we've got each other's backs. And that's a hell of a tribe to build, I think.
And talking of your tribe, that segues nicely into your new venture, Women in Scrap. So we're recording this on the 28th of February. It's going to go out towards the end of March. And you are having your first sold out Women in Scrap dinner on International Women's Day on the 8th of March. And I've got a ticket and I'm really looking forward to it. I will be running across Millennium Point from a conference to the bar and meet you in there. Why now? Why now with Women in Scrap?
So one of the things is a good friend of mine, Susie Burridge, heads up two associations, the Bureau of International Recycling and the BMRA. Never been heard of. Like, we've never had a woman doing that. So that helps, that makes sense to everybody, and worldwide, everyone is now watching certain women, myself, Susie, there's others standing up and owning their space. But I want to create a way that we can get together. We can chat about the stuff that goes on within our own companies in a safe space. So the older ones can give some advice to the younger ones, maybe how to diffuse situations that they're finding uncomfortable, but they're terrified of their job being lost if they face up to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think we're in a good place, and there's enough of us now to, again, back to creating a tribe, create a tribe for these people already in the industry and those coming into the industry to really be able to further their careers and get some mentorship along the way to maybe cut those problems before they even become a problem. Because most of us older ones have dealt with quite a lot of stuff over the years, and we do know how to deal with it well without damaging our businesses. That's a lot to give over.
I think that's really important. And I think our generation, sort of Gen X, because we've lived through all the technological changes and everything else, and they've been part of our working life, I think we had instances where things were starting to be recognised as wrong in the 80s and 90s, and language and behaviours and things like that. And I think there are some women, perhaps the generation above us, who will sort of go, well, we had it worse, so stop moaning. Not every woman, but I've certainly heard people I know sort of talk about it like that. And it's a case of, yes, it might have been worse, and it might have been a bit worse for us, but that doesn't mean it's okay what's happening now to people in situations who are younger. We want it right for everybody. And if that help and advice that you're giving them can help have those difficult conversations, or propose resolutions or solutions, that's just going to be best for everybody. And it makes the whole industry sustainable going forward, which of course is a watchword of your industry. You are the most sustainable industry. You're based on sustainability. How important is it for you, both sort of for future generations, the sustainability of individuals, but also the more practical side of sustainability?
Well, in terms of sustainability, as you say, we were recycling before recycling was even a word. It's been forever. It goes round, and then all of a sudden, low carbon, circular economy, everything starts coming out. And I even sit there sometimes and go, oh, that's great, I'm going to do some work on that. And then I have to go, well, I've been doing that for a really long time. So what I'm hoping is, so we have a young generation coming up, and actually, if you start talking to people at age sort of 15, 16, GCSE level, it's important to them. They're not using these words because their business needs to use these words to gain a contract. They care about it. They want to be involved in it. So in my head, I confuse the two. We're in a sustainable business, and I've got a bunch of young people coming up who want to be more sustainable. Well, if I can bring those two together, and even younger than that, I mean, there's a woman over in America that has done these books about Ali the Can and, Scrap University aimed at primary school children. If we can start there, then actually this recruitment thing that I keep banging on about, the fact that I can't easily find people to bring into this dirty industry as it used to be perceived, well, I'm going to start younger. I'm going to start changing the narrative before they've even thought about what they want to do for a living, by going, actually, you care about the environment. We all care, as we should. I want my grandchildren, if I ever get any, to have a wonderful world, and for it to be normal to recycle, not to throw away. And there's a great fusion coming along, which is fun, exciting, profitable, great career path. You can travel the world, so I think sustainability for us is everything. But we need government on our side. We need the powers that be in the schools. We need manufacturing pushed to the front. We need recycling pushed to the front, because sometimes as a business owner, particularly in the space, legislation, which is fine. I am forward thinking. I'll move with that. But give me something on the other side. Help me out on the other side, push me forward, appreciate us for what we are actually doing here. And then we can get the people in. And that's a whole new job sector. So yeah, that's me banging my drum about that one.
Keep banging the drum, definitely. But you're right. I mean, we've sort of been shouting for an industrial strategy, which will link into manufacturing in the metal sector and the scrap and metal recycling industries. And we've just had announced last week the Small Business Council. I know Julie White from D-Drills on there, but I must admit I only know that because it was on Instagram. I've not actually sat and gone down the rest. But we've got a great woman there who's in concrete. So that there's a brilliant businesswoman in a manufacturing engineering business who's on there. And hopefully people will start listening to people like her and people like us.
Yeah.
But I think we have a long way to go. I keep doing this. We're nearly over time. Quick question. You mentioned you go to the gym a lot. I started strength training because it works a lot better for women in their 50s than cardio. And you're not in your 50s, but you have you do a lot of lifting as well. So I've got no upper body strength at all. Being an ex-dancer, all my strength's in my legs. So I'm just starting to sort of lift properly. And I'm not very good. So I do Peloton, so I have my Peloton weight. And I'm currently lifting 30 pounds. I don't know what that is in kilos. So
15
it's what,
kilos, I think.
2.5 stone. So what are you lifting? Go on, put me to shame.
So I absolutely love Romanian deadlifts. That's my kind of thing. So I'd probably be I'm doing at the moment 2040. I'd be doing about 80 kg on my Romanians at the moment. And I love it, because if I can do that, then I learned this from a lady called Kim Constable. She's the sculpted vegan. I followed her for a while, and she said, we can do hard things. So just pushing through that thing when you think you cannot get that weight up and doing it proves to myself that I can do hard things.
Friend of mine, Naomi Hadley, hi Smacks. She's one of the strongest women in Europe. And she started lifting just before COVID. And she's in her 40s. Yeah. So last question then. What's the best advice you've ever received?
I think, and it's a hard one to live by, but this is one of Dad's, bear no malice. It will hurt you more than it will ever hurt them. Meaning, something happens, it feels terrible in the moment, but if you don't recover, learn from it, and move on, it will ruin you far quicker than it will have any effect on the other person. And I try and live by it.
That's really interesting. You're gonna sleep through the night a lot better if you don't hold on to it, aren't you? Oh, thank you so much, Amy, for coming on the podcast. And I look forward to having a very large glass of wine with you on the 8th of March to celebrate.
We're going to have a party. It's going to be great.
We get a taxi home afterwards. I can't drink too much. Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kirsty. Take care.